Good evening, welcome to Tuesday's Midlands Today from the BBC. Tonight, an influential group of MPs backs plans for a high-speed rail link between Birmingham and London.
The Commons Transport Select Committee published its report into the proposals today, saying there's a good case for high-speed rail and that it would be a catalyst for economic growth.
They also think the £17 billion project is affordable. But there was caution too.
The committee said it was concerned that the line may have a substantial negative impact on the countryside. And they also say a new line must not reduce investment in the existing rail network.
Any high-speed route should also follow existing transport corridors. That means keeping it close to the motorways or established rail routes. Our transport correspondent Peter Plisner has this report.
Thumbing through today's report, John Levitt and his wife Diana are likely to be affected by HS2. Their house is close to a disused railway line which high-speed planners want to reuse. Like many along the proposed route, the Levitts can't see the point of HS2.
This concentration on 250 miles an hour has meant that they've only had one option, which is the straight line option through virgin countryside. So, and that is one of the major criticisms, that the alternatives have not been properly explored.
I think it's totally the wrong project at the moment, when there are far more deserving courses, and the increase in capacity that is definitely needed on the West Coast Main Line could be provided by much lower cost options and much quicker.
This is the proposed route. On the new line, passengers from London would reach Birmingham in 49 minutes instead of the 1 hour 24 minutes it takes now. The line would be extended with one branch to Manchester, the other to Leeds. Leeds-London journey times would be 1 hour 20 minutes instead of the 2 hours and 20 minutes it currently takes. And for places like Burton Green, this report's a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, committee members do say there's a good case for high-speed rail, but they also make a series of recommendations which they want the government to seriously consider before pressing ahead with the scheme. Among other things, the committee wants the government to commit to building a whole network of high-speed lines, including to Manchester and Leeds, before asking for approval for HS2.
A line that goes from London to Birmingham is probably not justified. The basis for the support for this line is on it going at least to Manchester and Leeds, and hopefully beyond that to Scotland.
MPs also want the government to make it clear how HS2 fits into both its aviation and transport strategies. They also want ministers to look again at whether it should link to Heathrow Airport. And following concerns that places like Coventry might have fewer fast trains once HS2 is operational, they want more information about the impact on existing timetables. Supporters of high-speed rail have, not surprisingly, welcomed today's report as yet more evidence of its importance.
It's a bit of a no-brainer. We really can't do without it. The West Midlands economy is suffering at the moment, and a scheme like this will bring some real economic benefits to the area.
And for those opposed to HS2, there was another recommendation they'll be pleased with. The committee's report says the government should stop calling them NIMBYs.
Well, in a moment we'll be speaking to Patrick Burns with The View from Westminster. But first of all, Peter joins us from Burton Green in Warwickshire, a village which faces being cut in two should high-speed rail go ahead. Now, Peter, it seems to me there's something in this report for supporters and opponents of HS2. What have people there had to say?
Well, this is the village hall we're in tonight. As you can see, a dance class going on. This is the focal point for the village, and a focal point indeed for protests against high-speed rail. As you can see, banners all over the place. But this village hall itself is also threatened by high-speed rail. It's also the home of one of the leading campaigners against HS2, Jerry Marshall. Jerry, what do you make of today's report?
Well, I was encouraged that the report actually contained some devastating criticisms of the case for HS2. In effect, they're telling the Department for Transport to go back to the drawing board. So they're asking for a new business case, including a lower value to time savings, which will devastate the business case.
But nevertheless, they do say it's got a good case. They say it could be the catalyst for economic growth. You can't argue with that, can you?
Well, if you go to the detail of the report, they say, in fact, it's very difficult to predict whether high-speed rail will impact economic growth. and it varies from country to country.
So why do you think this group has backed it rather than, as you seem to be suggesting, gone against it?
Well, they haven't really, and they're deeply divided. Certainly the headline, which comes really from the chairperson who's very much in favour of it, says that there's a case for it. But in the detail of the report, again and again, they completely destroy the case. So, for example, they pick up the 18 trains an hour issue. Now, France only managed 13 trains an hour. That's a major safety issue, and it means that HS2 cannot meet the capacity claims that it says it will make. And they say, go back and have a look at the viable alternatives to HS2 because the Department for Transport haven't looked at them properly, which is what we've been saying for a long time.
Very briefly, they also say that this line should be a network rather than just a single line.
Well, clearly, if you just have a bit of line that doesn't connect with anything, that's a disaster. But it's much better to work on the existing line, which already has connectivity to all the cities in the Midlands and elsewhere.
Jerry, many thanks. Well, one report published now. We're now waiting for another one due from the government next month when they release the results of that big consultation they held in the summer.
Peter, thank you.
And the report has produced contrasting reactions at Westminster. We're joined from there now by our political editor, Patrick Burns. So, Patrick, we've got a new Transport Secretary, Justine Greening. What's she had to say about this report?
Absolutely nothing whatsoever, Suzanne. The Transport Department says she simply can't comment directly on this because the consultation period is closed. Although she has set up a meeting with MPs in a couple of weeks' time, and as Peter's just said, 3 weeks after that comes the really big announcement following on from the consultation process. And the parliamentary clock is ticking. There's an awful lot of work to be done if ministers are to succeed in their objective of having the enabling legislation on the statute book before the next general election. I put it to the Birmingham MP, who is leading the all-party campaign in support of high-speed rail, that what the committee is saying is that there is a good case for it, but she and her colleagues haven't made it yet.
If you look at successful economies across the world, a serious infrastructure for your transport system is essential, and we haven't got that in this country. We are London-centric, and we, for example, don't take enough account of the way, like we in the Midlands, would trade with the North East, with the North West, and that's what the rail link will open up.
I think that the Transport Select Committee's report that's out today asks some of the questions that we've asked, and in fact it goes a bit further. It questions the technical viability of 18 trains per hour, for example, and it points out there isn't a high-speed system in the world that has more than 14 trains an hour. Well, if you drop the trains from 18 an hour to 14 an hour, the business case gets blown open completely.
Well, opinions are clearly very sharply divided. Does this report offer a way of resolving the dispute between the two sides?
In theory, you'd think it might, but actually I think opinions are becoming more entrenched on both sides. As we've heard, opponents think that it vindicates many of the arguments they've been putting. Supporters say that far from deliberating too long over the Select Committee's report, ministers should actually accelerate the legislation and put a bill before Parliament as early as next year.
Hey, Patrick, then what do you expect to happen? Will the government reconsider its position or just press ahead?
The word here at Westminster is that ministers are more determined than ever to press ahead with it. Remember, it commands the support officially of all three main parties, which makes it a formidable political combination. This is where that decision will be made in the end, not in Burton Green, sadly for them.
OK, Patrick, thank you very much.